2024 is almost over, and you know what that means. It's time to reflect on my year of reading and talk about my plans for the channel in 2025. Hello, Bookworm. My name is Hannah Greendale, and there's a lot of bookish whatnot I want to cover in this video, so here's what you can expect today. I'm going to briefly reflect on my 2024 year on BookTube, followed by a discussion of one long-anticipated book that was released this year. Then I'm going to share with you which books are currently my most anticipated reads of 2025. After that, I'm going to tell you about some fantastic authors that I discovered this year who are now permanently on my radar. And since my next video will be my best books of 2024, in this video I'm going to tell you about my honorable mentions for the year. Books that didn't quite make the cut, but you absolutely need to hear about. Finally, I'll discuss what you can expect from me and the channel in 2025. I've got a lot to cover, so let's dive in. On December 16th of 2023, I launched this channel with the BookTube newbie tag. In that video, I made 3 statements about the future that I now look back on and laugh. The first thing I said is that I wanted to read more classics in 2024, and I said a reasonable goal was to read 1 classic per month. Did I pull this off? No, not even close. I intentionally picked up 2 classics in January and 1 or 2 in February, but then I got distracted by women's prize season, and after that, I never gave classics another thought for the rest of the year. The second thing I said is that I hoped to buy bookshelves by spring of 2024, but as of right now, my books are still in boxes because I don't have bookshelves yet. Mind you, I boxed up my books when I moved from the US to Singapore in December of 2019, which means my books have been in boxes for 5 years. That's a painfully long time for somebody whose world hinges on books, but this last year, my time, energy, and money were consumed by work on this house. I was not in a position where I could even think about getting bookshelves, which brings me to the final thing I said in my BookTube newbie tag video, which was that I plan to post 1 video, maybe 2 per month in 2024, but by the end of the year, what I actually managed was to post about 1 video every 2 months. I just love voicing my plans out loud so I can spend the next year watching them fall apart. One good thing about 2024 is that it saw the release of a sequel I've been looking forward to for years. In 2018, sci-fi writer extraordinaire Catherine M. Valente published Space Opera. It was pitched as The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets Eurovision, in the story of sentient races competing for glory in a galactic musical contest with the fate of planet Earth hanging in the balance. It's a book that takes you to the strangest corner of the galaxy you could fathom, and it ranks among the most bizarre, imaginative, and comically verbose novels I've ever read. Space Opera was a bestseller, a Hugo Award finalist, and one of my best books of 2018. So when a fellow bookworm told me in 2019 that he'd recently met Valente, who said she was working on a sequel to Space Opera, I was ecstatic. I spent every day since then wondering when the sequel would come out. I regularly scoured the web for signs of its existence, and I erupted with joy when Space Oddity was officially announced for publication in September of this year. Talk about one of the fastest pre-orders I've ever made. The big question that follows is, was it worth the wait? And I don't know, because I haven't read it yet. It's been such a demanding year. I haven't had the wherewithal for this book. I could have probably squeezed it in at the end of the year, but I suspect it'll be a top read, which means I'd have to rush through it to see if it belongs in my best books of the year video. And after such a long wait, I want to savor this reading experience. So I'm hoping to read Space Oddity early next year and maybe you'll see me talk about this book again in a Best Books of 2025 video. Now, speaking of next year, let's talk about upcoming releases that I can't wait to read. I'm going to go through my most anticipated new releases of 2025 in order of publication date. But first, I want to mention that if you live in the US, you can shop for books from home without buying from Amazon. Instead, go to bookshop.org, where the proceeds from your purchases go to indie bookstores. You can even choose which indie benefits from your purchase. And if you use my affiliate link to shop, you support my channel, fund indie bookstores, and you get new books. That's a triple win. Let's get to my most anticipated new releases. First up on January 7th is The Capital of Dreams by Heather O'Neill. This is described as a wistfully comic yet dark dystopian fairy tale about a 14-year-old girl named Sophia. She lives in a small, forgotten country where myths of fairies and sentient trees inspire the arts, including her mother Clara, who is a brilliant writer. When their country is invaded, Sophia is asked to smuggle her mother's new manuscript out of the country, but the train on which she evacuates halts suspiciously in the middle of the forest. The blurb says, on an epic journey through woods and raised towns, colliding with soldiers, survivors, and other lost children, Sophia must make the choice between kindness and her own survival. Sign me up for that book immediately. Also on January 7th, we're getting a new paperback edition of Lud in the Mist by Hope Merles. This book was first published in the 1920s. It blends fantasy with mystery and the story of a sleepy little town where someone is smuggling in fairy fruit, and that's causing bewitched children to disappear. Now, I already have a beautiful edition of this book, but I love it so much that I've pre-ordered this new edition for my collection. I don't think enough people know about Lud in the Mist, and it's my hope that this new edition will draw more readers to it. On January 8th, we have Tartufo by none other than Kira Jane Buxton, who wrote Hollow Kingdom and Feral Creatures. Hollow Kingdom is one of my all-time favorite books. I even included it in my video featuring 10 must-have sci-fi and fantasy books in my fallout shelter. Now, Hollow Kingdom is about a domesticated crow and his doofus dog companion Dennis navigating a Seattle that's overrun with zombies. So Tartufo is not the kind of book I expected Buxton to publish next, but I'm very curious about it. The blurb says that after nearly losing the election to a geriatric donkey, the newly installed mayor fears the sun has finally set on their rural Italian village. A geriatric donkey in the mayoral race. Like, we're already off to a great start. The blurb goes on to say that a local truffle hunter discovers a truffle on Tartufo that has the power to either be the greatest gift or the foulest curse the village has ever seen. It's supposed to have the same enchanting style and raucous humor of Buxton's other work, and it's a story about how holding on to harmony in the face of hardship can grow something beautiful and rare beneath the surface. This book sounds strange and silly, and I am 100% here for it. I have 2 more books to share, and both of them release in February. On February 18th, we get Upon a Starlit Tide by Kel Woods. I have irrationally high hopes for this book. It's set in 18th century Brittany, and it follows the youngest daughter of a wealthy French ship owner. Now, while her sisters are securing advantageous marriages, she spends her days secretly being taught to sail by an English smuggler. On a stormy morning, she rescues a drowning man from the sea and is plunged into a world of glittering balls and fairy magic, where secrets that have long been lost in the shadowy depths of the ocean begin to rise to the surface. This sounds so enchanting. The cover is beautiful, and the book has gorgeous end papers. I cannot wait to get my hands on my copy. Finally, February 25th sees the publication of The Strange Case of Jane O by Karen Thompson Walker. Now, she wrote The Dreamers, a book about a town overcome with an illness that causes people to sleep for days. And while sleeping, they experience unusually high levels of brain activity because they're in a state of heightened dreaming. Meanwhile, the world around them is completely falling apart. It's one of those books that I think of every few months and recall being amazed by. And I've been looking forward to her next book ever since I finished reading The Dreamers. The Strange Case of Jane O is about a young mother who's suddenly struck by puzzling psychological symptoms like amnesia, premonitions, hallucinations, and an inexplicable sense of dread. 3 days after she visits a psychiatrist for the first time, she goes missing, and when she's finally found, she has no memory of what happened to her. This leads her back into therapy, where she must discern whether her strange experiences are because she's overwhelmed by motherhood or if they're a manifestation of buried trauma. The blurb goes on to say that Jane's symptoms lead her psychiatrist to question everything he knows about so-called reality, including events in his own life. This book sounds super weird, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've pre-ordered all 5 of these books on bookshop.org. I'll also be on the lookout next year for possible new releases from authors whose work I discovered this year for the first time. I have 3 authors whose work I read for the first time this year, and now I am following them on Goodreads because I want to be notified when their next book publishes. The first author is Alexis Shakin. I read her Carol Shields Prize shortlisted novel, Elsewhere, and I walked away from it marveling at her ability to craft a story with such painfully topical themes that's also mysterious and unsettling. It's about an isolated town where mothers occasionally vanish, and it's assumed that they disappear into the clouds. I'm hoping to talk about this book more in a later video, but for now, I'll just say that if you're a fan of Shirley Jackson, particularly The Lottery, or We Have Always Lived in the Castle, then you need to check this one out. The second author I'm delighted to have discovered this year is Maroa Yazidi. I read her Women's Prize long-listed novel, Creatures of Passage, and my brain cannot understand how a writer could sit down and weave a story like this one. I don't even know how to describe it. It's set in 1970s Washington, but it's also set in the underworld. It follows a grieving woman who ferries people around in her car, but it also follows a man who was murdered and a boy who sees ghosts. It's one of those stories that's filled with disparate threads that eventually come together in beautiful and surprising ways. It feels like such a singular reading experience. I'm not sure what else to compare it to. Maybe The Summer That Melted Everything by Tiffany McDaniel. If you liked that book, or if you enjoy literary ghost stories with luscious prose, then give this one a read. The third author I discovered this year is Talila Lakshmi Kalluri. Her Carol Shields Prize shortlisted short story collection, What We Fed to the Manticore, absolutely ravaged my heart. I'm talking about having my heart ripped from my chest, batted around in a tiger's paws, gnawed on by a polar bear, trampled by a donkey, and feasted on by a vulture. Why do I say that? Well, because this is a short story collection that's all about animals. And my favorite thing about it, aside from the stunning prose, is that oftentimes the stories are told by animals. I love when a story has a non-human narrator. I enjoy looking at the challenges it presents to the writer and the opportunities for varied perspective it provides. Now, in this book, Kalluri uses her animal narrators to effectively convey what it's like to be an animal moving through a world with climate change, where humans can be either ruthless aggressors or loving companions. And any author who can move me to tears with her work is one who has my attention, so I'm excited to see what Talila Lakshmi Kalluri will publish next. That brings us to my honorable mentions for 2024. These are books that didn't quite get a 5-star rating from me, so they won't appear in my best books of the year video, but they have stayed on my mind since the moment I finished them, so I can't resist telling you about them. The first book is Invisible Labor, the untold story of the cesarean and the disturbing state of maternal medical care by Rachel Summerstein. That subtitle covers a lot, but let me just bullet point some of this book for you. It centers specifically on maternal medical care in the US. It explores why the number of C-sections being performed are increasing here, covers how difficult the recovery period can be, explains why a C-section can prevent a person from having future vaginal births, reveals why in emergent situations hospitals favor saving the baby over the mother, and a whole lot more. It also tells Summer Stein's experience of having an unplanned emergency C-section in which her anesthesia did not take, but she had to endure the procedure anyway. And she later found other women who experienced this trauma too. It turns out it's not as rare as you might think. Now, I suspect that most people would benefit from reading this book, but especially people in the US, since we now live in a country with forced birth. It's more important than ever to understand just how serious a thing it is for someone to give birth. My second honorable mention goes to Please Stop Trying to Leave Me, the debut novel from Alana Saab. This is one of the most unusual books I read this year. It follows 27-year-old Norma, who suffers from derealization disorder, which means she feels disconnected from the world as if it's not real. Now, she refers to the pervasive feeling of disconnection as oblivion, and she blames oblivion for her inability to finish writing her manuscript. When we first meet Norma, she's at her first therapy session, and we then tumble down the rabbit hole of her mind while she journeys toward a diagnosis, processes her trauma, and strives to finish writing her manuscript. The story alternates between Norma's therapy sessions, which are written in a comedic stream of consciousness, and sections of her manuscript, which are narrative-driven and provide insights into her character as well as her relationship with her partner. If you've ever been in therapy, this book will make you laugh, but it's also very dark and strange at times. Bottom line, if you like weird, experimental queer fiction, don't miss this one. My third honorable mention goes to Code Dependent, Living in the Shadow of AI by Madhumita Murgia. This was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Nonfiction, and it was kindly sent to me by the publisher. Oh, how I wish I'd had this book before I posted my video on astonishing books about AI. In that video, I talked about Parmi Olsen's book, Supremacy, in which she reveals who is behind AI's development and whether they're honorable or questionable stewards of it. It's a book that's fascinating and worrying in equal measure, and Code Dependent is the perfect follow-up to it because instead of looking at AI's developers, it examines the various ways in which AI is affecting people across the globe. Murgia reports on everything from an exiled activist in China and doctors in rural India to food delivery drivers in the US and content moderators working for all the social media giants. She explores how algorithms are used for things like criminal projection, medical treatment, job application filtering, children's education, and a lot more. She also discusses digital colonialism, something that wasn't even on my radar, but of course we should be thinking about who's taking information from whom, whether it's being taken consensually, and what's being done with it. And one of the most compelling chapters in this book covers deepfake pornography and the people, mostly women, who are victims of it. Murgia speaks to a defense attorney who represents victims of this kind of assault, and she says, it's wrong to call it digital assault because it's assault that happens in a digital space. Yes, but the victim is not digital, they're human. Another point she made that shook me is the fact that content moderators work around the clock, pulling the worst of the worst content from the web. So that means the trash fire that is the internet as we know it now is the cleaned up, nice version of it. The big takeaway from this book is that how algorithms are used is increasingly becoming a human rights issue, and it's only going to get more complicated from here. If you are at all interested in our future with AI, Code Dependent is a must read. My last honorable mention goes to Enlightenment by Sarah Perry. It's been so interesting to see how this book has garnered such mixed reactions from readers. I think one reason some readers struggle to connect with this book is because It's trying to be and do a lot of different things in the story of a man who embarks on a decades-long search for a 19th century astronomer who's rumored to haunt a nearby manor. This book is an ode to love, but also an elegy to the stars. It's a tender love story about friendship and faith. There's also a quiet mystery at play and a story of scientific discovery woven into a ghost story. There's a lot going on, but for me, it worked. I enjoyed all of the symbolism and the symmetry and how the story is studded with articles, letters, and emails. I especially love how life keeps pulling these characters apart and yet the stars keep drawing them back together. I was kindly sent an Arc of Enlightenment from the publisher, but that did not stop me from buying the beautiful hardcover edition. I truly believe that if I hadn't had such a demanding year of home remodeling, I would have read this book a second time. Now, I'm thrilled to have it in my collection, and I look forward to someday reading it again. Let's look ahead at 2025. What do I envision for this channel? Well, if this year has taught me anything, it's that I shouldn't plan too much because life has a way of throwing incessant curveballs. I think roughly one video a month, give or take, is a reasonable goal. Will I laugh those words a year from now? Only time will tell. Now, getting back on BookTube was never about feeding an algorithm for me. I'm not interested in exhausting myself generating loads of inane content so some rich guy at the top can get even richer off my free labor. I'm here because I genuinely enjoy sharing books and because I want to connect with people who love to read. I also intend to keep things upbeat and my reviewing of books positive. Aside from the fact that we are very lucky people still write books and we should do everything we can to support them, I realized somewhere along the way that reviewing books is not about me. It's not constructive or considerate for me to bash someone's work just because I didn't like it. I am not the main character here. You are. My goal is to help pair books with the right people. If I can help you connect with a book you enjoy so much that you feel compelled to read another one, then my time and energy have been well spent. The one thing I will do for myself next year is enjoy Women's Prize season to the fullest. This year I posted a video reviewing the 16 Women's Prize nominees for fiction and nonfiction that I elected to read, and I'd really like to do the same thing next year. I was also really fortunate to work closely this year with the Carol Shields Prize, which is similar to the UK Women's Prize, only it celebrates fiction and short fiction from women and non-binary authors in the US and Canada. Now, I was sent this year's Carol Shields Prize shortlist, and I posted a video reviewing all 5 books. I would love, love, love to do the same thing next year. So we'll see how things go. Beyond that, I think a no-pressure posting schedule will keep things fun for me, and it means you'll get content when I have something that I'm really excited to share. Also, feel free to tell me if there are any videos you'd like me to make. I can't guarantee that I'll get to them, but I'm certainly open to suggestions. I have officially covered everything I wanted to discuss in this video. My next video will be my best books of 2024, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. In the meantime, I wish you happy holidays, happy new year, and happy reading.